You guys, where are you in the world?
I am in Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho. Okay, I only know that from ClickFunnels. So you're in like the ClickFunnels.
In the Mecca of ClickFunnels, yeah.
I was trying to think of what the word was, but the only word came to me is Hauptstadt, which is the German word because I'm in Germany. And so I'm like, there's another English word for it. I just don't know what it is. I'm losing my English. Hey. All right, Charity, before I pass this on to you, she's going to be talking about hearing God's voice when his first language isn't English. I love the title of the session. Before I pass it off to you, if you guys don't know who Charity is, I'm gonna let you know a little bit about her. She is an author, inspirational speaker, a soulful mindset coach, savvy business strategist that has coached over 1,000 women all over the world to step into their greatest potential, grow their confidence, build their coaching impact, and make a coaching business and make a major impact, IMPACT. Her expertise is in mindset, confidence, and becoming a heart-centered leader that turns their passion into profit. That's her superpower. She is an award-winning entrepreneur, down-to-earth, yet powerful speaker, as we will find out, podcaster, if you check her out on iTunes, author of the #1 new release, #2 bestseller, Meant for More, Igniting Your Purpose in a World That Tries to Dim Your Light. Oh my goodness, we are so honored to have you, Charity. Welcome, everyone. Round of applause. We're all really excited for you.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here. And Danny, I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you have done to put together this incredible online virtual summit and to just bring together such amazing women. So thank you for everything that you do, even behind the scenes, because I know a lot of times that behind the scenes stuff, it doesn't get seen or recognized, and girl, you have rocked it. So
thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to hide myself from the stage. You have some time to chat, and maybe we can have a little bit of question and answer time after. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
All right. See you guys.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm excited. So I actually want to see in the chat where you guys are from. You heard where I'm from, Idaho. I'm in Boise, Idaho. It's a beautiful fall day here. We don't have snow yet, but I would love to see where you guys are watching from, tuning in from. Nice. We've got Arizona, Ohio, California, Memphis, North Carolina. Ooh, Germany, it's snowing. Awesome. 80 degrees there. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you guys again for being here. And I'm excited to join with you and to chat a little bit about what it looks like to hear the voice of God. And this isn't necessarily a message that we would typically hear in a conference or in a summit like this. This might be something more that we would hear in church, right? Or maybe, in a Christian book. But what's really interesting about this is that when we as entrepreneurs, as coaches, as authors, as mission-driven female entrepreneurs that are really desiring to make an impact in other people's lives, when we can really partner our heart's mission with the mission of heaven, incredible, incredible things happen. Wouldn't you agree? If you guys agree, like type in the chat, like, yes, like I want to partner my vision with the vision of God and really co-create and partner with him to be able to have the plans that God has for our lives, because how many of us know that they're obviously way better than ours, right? So I'm going to share a little bit of a story with you as far as how I started to kind of partner with God's plan for my life instead of my own plan. And this actually started in the whole, like, you heard my book, Meant for More. My podcast is actually called Meant for More. And where this actually came from was coming from one of the darkest times in my life, actually. And if we're gonna be friends, which we're on this and we are friends now. If you know anything about me, then you can know that, yes, I love a good good lip gloss or some cute shoes, or we can talk about the weather, but I also really honestly just hate surface conversations. So we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. So if you are like ready to cannonball in the pool, here we go. So the whole Meant for More message actually came a few years ago, about 5 years ago, when I was journeying through a really big season of loss. And I'm going to share just a little bit about this. I do share it in my book, and hear my heart when I say this. I will bring you out of kind of this dark night of the soul journey. But my husband and I 5 years ago journeyed through the loss of a child. And I also lost both of my grandparents within 19 days. And we were moving, and we were like, it just seemed like it was everything in my world was in upheaval. And going through the loss of a child, what was really interesting was I was super healthy and had a great pregnancy the first time around with my son, and had an amazing home birth, and like the picture perfect birth and pregnancy story the first time around. And now the second time around, losing this baby, it really shattered me, and it shattered a lot of different beliefs that I had. And it really was one of those seasons of life where like the big questions began to surface. And it was the why God, and it was the why this, and why us, and why our family, and why these hopes, and why these dreams. And I felt like there was this brokenness in my body where I was covered in shame and brokenness. Like I couldn't keep my baby safe. And I remember laying on the bathroom floor in a puddle of tears, even questioning my own life and why I was here. And if you've ever been in those dark night of the soul moments, you know that kind of these like big things come out, and these big questions come out, and they can rock your world. And I remember sitting there in all of the shame and all of the brokenness, and God meeting me. And what was really interesting was, as broken as I felt, he told me that there was nothing for me or that he didn't need to fix me. And all of the shame and the isolation that I felt of walking through this, even though my husband was super supportive, I just felt really, really alone. He didn't give me this 7-step to get out of my whatever shame spiral. What was really amazing about what God did in that moment was that he came and sat with me, and he began to infuse purpose in my life, and the deep, deep belief in every cell of my body that every single one of us is a walking and talking miracle, that we are a God dream wrapped in human flesh, and that there are thousands and millions of pieces and parts that have to come together for life to be sustained. And so the fact that you are here, not only on this call or on this at this conference, but that you are walking this planet with a God dream inside of your heart, it's not a mistake. And what's really interesting about being God dreams that walk around on this earth is that it's our job to partner with heaven, with the dreams that are on our hearts. Because how many of us know, right, that we were intimately knit together in our mother's womb by a good God who has such good plans for us. And when he knit us together, what's really interesting is that he placed potential inside of us. He placed a dream in our heart. And the word heart in Hebrew, I think it's said either kardiva or kardiva, however you say it, but it literally means that it is something that is knit together into your very being. So those dreams on your heart, they matter, and God put them there for a reason. And for us, like I mentioned, we get to now partner with God to be able to bring those dreams out into the world. And so in that dark night of the soul season, as I journeyed out through healing, I went to grief counseling and got a lot of inner healing and had an incredible community around me. And as I started to heal out of this dark night of the soul journey and through this season of loss, like I mentioned, what was really interesting was God began to not only speak to me in ways that I'd never heard before, through visions, through dreams, through, I wouldn't say the audible voice of God, but very, very strong to where I knew that it was the voice of God. And I think that we can, right, there's a difference between being imparted something, like we can teach what we know. There's a lot of people out there teaching what they know, but there's a difference because we can impart what we experience. And so it's really interesting is that I was then given out of that season actually the gift of impartation to hear God's voice, to speak hope and truth and life over you, over the miracle that you are, and to see the God dream inside of you. I like to call it gold mining. And so it's right, it's like this, like you got to sort through the junk sometimes, like some of the limiting beliefs that we've picked up along the way. And we got to find the gold nuggets. We got to find the potential inside. We got to find that God dream inside. And now we take this thing and we get to grow it and we get to partner with God. But if to partner with God, we have to be able to hear his voice, right? We have to be able to know how he's speaking to us. And like you heard, this message is that God's first language isn't necessarily English, right? I know for us as English speaking people, for the most part, if you're listening to this, you probably speak English, is that we can tend to just kind of assume that God's first language is English, right? But we know if we start to think about it, it's like, oh yeah, he speaks in a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different languages, and there's a lot of different ways that our spirit, because we're mind, body, and spirit, can commune and connect with the Spirit of God. So I'm actually going to lay a little bit of foundation work, and then because I want to make sure that you guys are leaving here not just with really great information, but also practical and implementable information, because we can actually, I want to say it's, we only retain 7 to 10% when we just hear something, but we retain 85 to 95% when we actually implement and do something. So this is going to be a blend of both. So are you guys okay with that? If so, put in the chat. I know that was a little, like we dove into the deep end, right? So, but now we're coming out with this impartation where I am going to not only just teach you something, but to impart, because it's something that I have been imparted with. And that is now a divine gift that I am able to impart to you. So there's something that will happen regardless of a screen, right? Because God can work in your room, in my room, he can work in your house, in your office, and whatever, right? Because he doesn't care. He is not limited by screens. And so I'm believing that God is going to impart something really, really special because of the impartation that I have received. So I want to lay a little bit of groundwork first when it comes to hearing God's voice, okay? So first one is that every one of us is wired to connect with God. 1 Corinthians 15:46 says that the spiritual didn't come first, but that the natural, and then after that, the spiritual. And so from this verse, we can kind of, it's referring to that we can know what God is doing in the spiritual realm by looking around at what's going on in the natural, and by the way that God patterned the natural world, okay? So this is like our senses, right? We can see, we can hear, we can taste, we can feel, right? We can, what are the other, the other senses, right? And so because we have these physical senses, we also know that we have spiritual senses. Now there are 4 different ways that we can pick up on what God is doing. Okay, so these are kind of like love languages. And if you want a biblical reference, then I actually want to invite you to jump over onto my Instagram. My Instagram is @CharityMajors, and this is the post right here that you'll be able to get the biblical references for. But it talks about, wow, this might be news for you, but God's first language is not English. Okay, so jump on over if you want those biblical references. And so God speaks in multiple ways, right? In Job 33:14, it says that God does not speak, or God does speak now one way and now another. So we can know that he speaks in multiple ways, right? In the Bible, he spoke from a burning bush. He spoke from dreams, from visions, from angels, an audible voice, in the whisper of the wind, through all of creation. He can speak through songs, through other people, through senses, through inner knowings, etc. And our human mind and soul and body and spirit are hardwired to respond to each way that God speaks. But here's the thing is it's actually our responsibility to train ourselves to recognize how he is communicating. Proverbs 2:2 says, so train your heart to listen when I speak. And like I mentioned, there are 4 ways that we can receive communication from God. We can be seers. These are kind of like love languages, right? We can be seers, we can be hearers, We can be knowers. This is where you just like know that you know that you know. You don't know how you know, but you know. And then feelers. And so the seers, there's an internal seeing and an external seeing. So this is where maybe you pick up on something around you, like something is highlighted, right? Like it might be, it might be the lights in the back of my screen here, and something like God, you might just see those, and God might just give you like this message about like, oh, like you're meant to be the light of the world. You are meant to shine bright on, right? Like it might just come out of like something being highlighted and something that you see out here. Internal seeing might be the dreams or the visions that you have. Hearing, that can be the internal hearing of the voice of God, or when something is really highlighted, in a message that you hear, or from someone that you see. Maybe it's from a message at church where it's like, oh, like how many of you guys have like heard something, you're like, that was exactly what I needed to hear, right? God could speak through other people through our external hearing. Then we have our knowing. This is like where like that inner knowing, like I just know that I know that I know. I don't know how I know, but I know. And then there are feeling. And so this is more of typically people who are in the world. They're typically considered more of the empathic people, the empaths, where they can walk into a room and they can like feel all the feels and like feel what's going on, and can like really be affected unless they know the spiritual authority that they carry, that they are seated in Christ and carry, because of that, the authority over any of those atmospheres to be able to shift them. Okay, is this making sense so far? Go ahead and type in the chat, let me know. So with our receptors, another foundational principle is that we want to understand that they're not exclusive. So just like a love language, I know some of my top love languages are before I had kids, my top love language was physical touch and quality time. And what's now interesting, as a mom, I have a little 5-year-old, and he is so cuddly. And even like when I was breastfeeding and all that, it was like there were times where at the end of the day I was like touched out and like right, and I was so busy or overwhelmed, or the house was a mess, or whatever it might have been. And so my love language shifted a little bit more to include acts of service and not so much physical touch. But right, so they can kind of shift a little bit. And we are actually hardwired to be able to utilize all of them, right? In the physical world, you see things, you hear things, you taste things, you feel things, right? And so our spiritual senses are the same exact way. Now, we might have a couple of them that we typically default to, or that they're like super, super easy. But just like I mentioned in Proverbs 2:2, where it says, train your heart to listen as I speak, and that God speaks different ways. And so if we want to make sure that we are partnering with the God dream on our heart, that we are partnering with what heaven says about us, as well as about the future that God is creating and where he's going, and for us to be able to partner with his good plans, then we've got to be able to see what he's doing. We've got to be able to hear what he's doing. We've got to be able to taste and see that he is good. We've got to be able to know different things in our hearts. And so we want to make sure that we know that every single one of these ways of communing and connecting with the heart of God and with what heaven says about us and about the future is that it's not exclusive, that we get access to all of them. And we as believers, we have the ability to know his voice. Now, speaking of my son and knowing his voice, I remember not too long ago, we were at the library, and it was like a fun little like toddler, like jumping up around and lots of music. And there were probably, I don't know, 50 toddlers and and the parents that were there. And I remember just gently, like my son, his name is Judah, he was up towards the front doing his little dance and jumping up around listening to the story time. And I just barely said, Judah. And out of all of the noise, he turned and he knew that it was me speaking to him, right? And what's really interesting is that no matter whatever other external noise is going around, even me as a mom, I can hear his voice and I can pick it out of the crowd. Like, right? Like, have you ever been to a playground and it's like there's a bunch of kids running around, and you hear, right, like you hear a kid cry and you're like, nope, that's not my kid. Like, my kid's good, right? And so what's really interesting is that comes from intimacy, and that comes from where, right, like me and my son, like my ears are tuned to his voice and his ears are tuned to my voice. And so we are able to hear the voice of God and to know what he is doing on the earth, to see what he is doing, to feel what he is doing, to perceive what he is doing because of relationship and because of intimacy. Now, one thing that I've found when it comes to kind of the Christian world is that most people actually still have somewhat of a slave mentality. And how many of you, I'm going to explain what this means. So you can totally hear God's voice for other people, but it's harder to hear for yourself. You're like, oh, like God, like what am I supposed to do? I feel like I can totally I get this really great word for someone else, or like, oh, I like this encouraging word for someone else. Like I can totally see the potential inside of them, but I have no clue what the heck you say about me or what the heck you have called me to do or what the heck I'm supposed to do. Like, God, talk to me, right? Like, have you guys ever experienced that? Put in the chat, raise your hand, be brave here, right? And I did too. And what was really interesting was things that started to shift when I started to understand the authority that I have as a loved and chosen daughter compared to a slave. And here's what's really interesting is just to give you this perspective is that slaves get orders and even things to carry out for other people. But friends, sons, and daughters, which God has called us sons and daughters, right? They get secrets and they get conversation and they don't just get orders. And as a loved daughter, right? And I know for me, this was also true for me, was that I was like, there were so many times in my life where I felt like God, like when are you just gonna choose me? I'm just waiting here, oh, can you just choose me? Right. And I went into this achiever side of things where I had to feel like I had to earn his love when it was already it was like I tried to turn something that was freely given into a reward. I tried to earn his favor. I tried to earn his love. I tried to achieve and go and do and do and do all this stuff, right? I'm very capable. I can totally do all the things. But I was hearing his voice and relating to a good father as a slave, waiting for orders to be able to carry out. And I had turned what was a free gift into a reward. And so when I began to solidify the foundation of who I am and who I was as a loved daughter that's already loved, that I'm already chosen, that his favor means, right, that his face is turned towards you, that his attention is at you. You are already loved, you are already chosen. There's nothing, even that song Jireh by Maverick City, if you ever heard that, that's my jam, right? If there's nothing that you're not holding him up, so there's nothing that you could do to let him down. And when you understand that the goodness of God, that it is chasing after you, that he is already that he has already called you, that he is the God of a green light instead of a red light, right? That all his door, go knock on some doors and go see what opens, or go take some steps and moving forward, and God's going to protect you and he's going to close the doors that he wants to close, right? Even in my house, our doors are open and my son gets free reign to the house. If there's something that he maybe shouldn't touch, then we have that conversation. But he gets free reign first instead of everything is a no, right? So begin to understand that you are already chosen, that you already have the favor of God, and start to operate from the favor instead of for it, and start to operate from love instead of for it, and start to understand that the character and the quality of God and who he is as a good father is that he is the God of the green light, and you have full access to everything that he has in his house. Is this making sense? Are you guys doing good for that? Doing this good so far? So number 4 in this foundation is that we are hardwired to respond. Now, I think that there has kind of been this stereotype of, or this false understanding of what response or obedience looks like, right? God tells me this thing and I just have to just follow orders and do it, right? But what's really interesting is when you think about, I know even for me with my kid, I know I've used him as a lot of examples, but being a mom, being a parent has definitely taught me a lot about what it looks like to be a good father, a good mother. And when I talk with my son, and ask him to do something, I actually am inviting him into conversation and invite him into making a choice instead of just giving him orders on what to do, right? That's slave mentality again, right? So when I say, hey, buddy, would you like to wear this shirt or this shirt, right? There's choice. When I ask him, would you like to do this first or this first, right? There's choice. And what's really interesting about this stereotype of obedience is that the word obey is actually not in the Bible. And what we have taken as obedience is like that God is just giving us orders and we just have to like follow blindly and whatever it is. And yes, there is truth to that, because when we know that he is trustworthy and his plans for us are good, we can come from a space of trust and knowing that when he invites us to follow him, it's going to be in a good place. But he's not a dictator. He doesn't give orders. And the word obey in the Bible actually means to respond. And the choice that we have is in our response, right? When we can, right? Like God has given us choice, right? Like God is a God of love and love requires choice. That's why even in the Garden of Eden, there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that gave Adam and Eve choice and free will. So when God asks us something, he's inviting us into choice and he's inviting us into relationship. He's inviting us into a conversation. And so with the understanding of this, I actually want to, if you're okay with this, is to actually invite you into a conversation with God. And this is going to be for you to be able to hear his voice for your business and for your year. What's really fun about hearing the voice of God is that if you can just a couple little nuggets, because I know sometimes people can be like, oh, like I just don't hear his voice. I don't know, right? Like, so understand that it can come in multiple ways, like what we talked about in those 4 different ways of hearing, sensing, feeling, knowing. But also understand that even his thoughts towards you are more than the grains of the sand. And so you actually hear God more than you don't when your ears are tuned to his voice. And so I actually want to bring you through, and you guys are going to be able to text me and get a copy of this, but this is my God's plan for your year. And this is the business edition. So you're actually going to get to process through every single month with God a few different plans for your year. And what's really fun, I'm going to give you an example. So I did this was the first year that I did this. And what was really amazing is that every single month that when I was processing through God's plan for your year, for myself personally, so we prophesied, like I would ask God a couple different questions and then prophesy a sign. And the sign to where I would know that I was in that season came true every single time. So for example, back in September, when I did the God's plan for your year back in January last year, and then looking forward and ahead and getting a word for now September. So this is just a few months ago. What was really interesting was that things were going to rapidly increase in pace, almost like, but it was going to be easy and it was going to be fun and it was going to be almost like this luxury Ferrari, like a race car. And it was going to be just increasing in pace. And the sign that I asked for, that God gave me, was a rainbow. And the name that I would call him during that season was a promise keeper. And so these are kind of the things that now I'm keeping my eye out for this. And what was really interesting was also because I had that insight for September, and the rainbow was then promise keeper. I'm going to show you guys this really fun stuff. I've written a devotional as well, but instead of just being regular devotional, it is a card deck and a journal that goes along with it. And so I knew for me that a really great launch would be in September. And before I designed this not knowing that there was going to be a rainbow on it, or before the word was given to me in January. Okay. And so I knew for me strategically, it was like, okay, there's rainbows. So I'm going to plan this thing right here. Right. And it ended up being really, really awesome for the launch of my devotional card deck. And things did pick up, and I would have people even like randomly call me and leave me voice messages about these different promises that were on my heart that not very many people know about, just really my intimate circle of friends know about. Random people would call me about these promises that were on my heart. And I began to see the promises of God come about in ways that like all I could say was that he was absolutely the promise keeper. So how many of you guys think that it would be valuable to be able to partner with heaven for your business? Oh my God. Oh my God. So I'm actually, you guys can, I'm going to text you a copy of this. So if you actually want to text me the word plan, so just like PLAN, to the number 833-231-8098, you'll get this whole copy of it. But I actually want to just kind of take a minute and give you guys a little bit of insight and actually have you dream chase God's way and plan a couple things out for your year. Yep, the number is 833-231-8098. Text the word plan, PLAN. And I actually want you just to kind of get comfy in your seat. You can get that later on. I'll guide you through a couple of the questions now. And I want you to remember that you hear God's voice more than you don't. And it doesn't take a lot of striving. It doesn't take a lot of efforting to hear God's voice. So I actually want you just to kind of take a deep breath, close your eyes. And with the knowledge and the understanding, leaning into love as a loved daughter who gets the secrets of heaven, I want you just to take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale, and just turn your attention to God. Tune your spirit to his spirit. And now I want you, as a loved daughter who hears him more than you don't, knowing that the thoughts that he has towards you are more than the grains of sand in the sea, and that his plans for you are so good. I want you to ask him for the month of January, is there something special that I can offer my clients, customers, or audience this month? And I want you to write down the very first idea that comes to your mind. I want you to take 20, 30 seconds, because the spirit of revelation has bazillions and bazillions of ideas, and the plans that God has for you and for your future are good. And now I want you to ask for a sign. Say, God, what's a sign for me to know that this is the season for me to offer this to my clients? You might get a picture, like for me, I got a picture of a rainbow. You might hear something, you might feel heat or cold. You might just know that you know that you know. I want you to give yourself to prophesy a sign, and that's for the month of January. And now for February, because most of us in business, January can be kind of a crazy month. We've got new offers, we've got new things, we're taking care of new programs, new customers, new clients. But God has also called us to come from a space of rest. So now for February, I want you to ask God, how can I come from a place of rest this month? Just write down anything that you hear. It might be something as stop doing the 5 a.m. club. It might mean to take something off your plate. It might mean a little bit more self-care, but God knows. And I want you to ask for a sign. Typically is the first thing that comes to mind or to your heart, or a negative picture or a feeling or an impression, or you might just intuitively know. And now for March, and yes, I'm moving fast on purpose because it actually continues to tune our spirit to God's spirit instead of letting our chatterbox brain kick in. So now for the month of March, this is actually a seeing prompt. So we're going to work on seeing. And in your mind's eye, for the month of March, ask God, what are the pictures that you get regarding this month and your business that you want me to be aware of? Write it down. And the last prompt that I'm going to have you go through, this is actually a word you're going to hear God's heart for, and it's a secret person. Actually, I'm not going to reveal the name yet. But for this person, we're going to call this person 144, okay? Person 144 as an experiment. And this person is influential. They're actually waiting to hear a word from God about what to do for their future and what God is calling them to do. And I actually want you just to write them for the next 30 seconds what God reveals to you about them and about what they're supposed to do, what He has called them to do. I'll tell you who this person is in just a minute. You'll definitely know them. They're influential for sure. Maybe 10 more seconds of writing out the word that you're getting for this person. All right, and as you wrap up, you can always finish this word later. But this person, that word that you just wrote, is for you. Because God has called you to arise and to shine. You are here on purpose for a purpose, and the dreams on your heart, they are not a mistake. You are a God dream wrapped in human skin, walking the planet out of all of eternity for just a time as this. The message that is on your heart matters. The story and your journey and the hard times that you have been through matter. And God is going to use them for good, and He is going to use them for His glory. And so as I wrap up today, I want you to understand that you are loved, that you are chosen, that God is a God of a green light who wants to partner with you as a loved daughter. And instead of asking God, what should I do, and waiting for an order, I want you to understand that when you ask God what to do, He reflects back and says, I love, what do you want to do? Just like I do with my son. Because when you come alive, you display the goodness of God, and you are meant for it. Thank you guys for sharing your heart and your time, for being here and being present. Come hang out with me on Instagram if you want. check out my Meant for More podcast. And again, I want to send you that the free copy of the God's Plan for Your Year. I'll text it to you when you text the word plan to 833-231-8098. If you guys have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm here for you, to cheer you on, to believe in you, to help you draw out the potential inside of you, and to run full out unapologetically in your God dream, because you're meant for it. Thank you, guys.
Hey, wow. Thank you so much, Charity. Everyone, make sure you guided us through this time. It's just such a gift. It's such a gift. And I think, most of us are just like, go getters. We have, our families and our kids and our businesses. And I just want to thank you for reframing that, giving us some practical steps on how we can walk with God together, hear his voice, and really align our identity. Again, remember who he is, not the boss, but he's made us unique. The number again. Okay. Right now, guys, we just have a couple minutes. If you have a question for Charity, pop that in to the chat. I'm going to look for that number. Can you see it's on the stage there? Yvonne wrote it out, 833-231-8098. And you're texting the word plan. Any other questions? There we go. Charity, thank you. Number again. For February, I got a word that I'm to share a renewed sense of hope with my viewers. Oh, and your name is Hope. Oh, that's so cool. Did you know that you didn't know that she was talking about you, yet you got the word hope and it fits with your name. Oh, that's so cool. I love it.
So good.
Oh, cool. All right, guys. Any questions before we release of that? And it reminded me of we have a prayer house here near us, and it's really cool. It's actually a charismatic Catholic prayer house, and it is really neat. And the leader there is quite large in Europe, in the prayer house scene, I guess you could say, the European prayer house scene. And he has a similar teaching talking about how God, like, how does he look at you? Like, what is the gate? Just being under his gaze. And that's like how you took us in through like January and February, was this like being under his gaze. How do you feel when you're under the Father's gaze? How is he gazing at you? And I love the word gaze, right? Because it's not looking. It's not like the Paddington Bear hard stare. If anyone watches Paddington Bear, my kids love it. It's not that, like, your parent is like, hey, but it's a gaze, like this affectionate, adoring gaze. Yes, charismatic Catholic does exist. Europe is really big, and they're actually really amazing people. So I gotta, yeah. Anyway, I don't see any other questions coming in. Charity, do you have maybe one last thought before we say goodbye to everyone?
I'll just actually really fun. I'm just gonna draw one of my cards here. So this is a fun little devotional card deck, if you will. And I'm just gonna close my eyes and pick one. And this is for you guys today. Okay. Ooh, this is good. So the affirmation or the identity statement on this is called "There is no fear in love." And so you're invited to read Timothy 1 and 1 John 4. The song to listen to on the back, it's called "No Fear" by Carrie Job. And the prophetic message is, "Look into my eyes, beautiful one. Feel the love I have for you and the love that I am. I am God. I am good. I love you beyond what you could ever measure, dream, or imagine. Release any fear that you feel because it's not allowed to stay in my presence. So I can't help but say, if you guys are jumping out into learning how to partner with God for your year this year, there might be some fears that pop up, right? As we're expanding, as we're growing, as we're getting out of our comfort zone, as we might be saying, oh, like, okay, I've got to share this message of hope, like Hope was talking about, or oh my gosh, I'm supposed to like dream this much bigger this year. God is calling you to remember his love, and that as you step out with him in the big dreams on your heart, that there's no fear.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, big round of applause. Thank you, Charity. Oh, and it was so perfect because it fit with the gaze thing that I just said. Ah, I love it. Okay, and you can also go into Charity's booth. There's the Devo deck there, and I think you have some links in your booth that they can go and check out as well. So if you guys are on your mobile phone, you won't be able to see the booth, but we have links here from Charity in the chat you should be able to see, and you can always join later on a computer or a laptop, and you'll be able to see there. All right, Charity, see you later. Gotta move. There we go. All right, guys, before we take a break,